She worked in silence while others looked down on her. What they didn't know, she was quietly building something far greater than revenge. The golden light of late afternoon spilled through the grimy windows of the small-town textile factory, turning the dust in the air into floating sparks. The rhythmic hum of sewing machines filled the room, a steady mechanical heartbeat that seemed to echo the exhaustion of the workers. Maya wiped the sweat from her brow with the back of her sleeve, her hands rough and cracked from years of labor. Her fingers trembled slightly, not from weakness, but from the endless repetition of stitching, cutting, and lifting. She didn't complain. She never did. Her co-workers cast quick glances her way, some with quiet admiration, others with pity. Everyone knew Maya was the kind who took extra shifts, stayed late, and never raised her voice. Yet her pay envelope was always lighter than it should be. The smell of oil and dye hung thick in the air, clinging to her skin and hair. Outside, the sky was burning gold, but inside, time felt still, trapped between fatigue and survival. When the whistle finally blew, Maya let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Another long day was done. But deep down, something in her heart whispered that this day would not end like all the others. The bell rang, sharp and metallic, echoing across the factory floor. One by one, the workers stepped forward to collect their pay, worn hands reaching for the envelopes that kept their families fed. The air buzzed with quiet anticipation, the kind that comes after a week of back-breaking work. When Maya's turn came, she stepped up to the counter, her palms still smudged with oil. Mr. Dalton sat behind his worn wooden desk, flipping through his ledger without lifting his gaze. His voice came out flat and cold. "You're short on your quota this week. No pay for you." The words struck her like a slap. Maya froze, her heart sinking to the pit of her stomach. "Sir?" she began softly. The looms broke down twice. Dalton slammed the ledger shut. "Excuses don't pay bills, Maya. Maybe next week you'll work harder." A silence spread through the room. The sound of paper envelopes crinkling stopped. Workers stared at the floor, unwilling to meet her eyes. Maya swallowed hard, her throat tight, her chest burning with humiliation. She didn't argue. She simply turned away, her calloused hands clenched at her sides. But as she walked out into the fading light, something behind her calm eyes had changed. A quiet fire beginning to burn. Maya didn't argue. Words would have been wasted on a man like Dalton. Instead, she turned and walked out, her silence echoing louder than any protest. The factory door creaked behind her, closing on the sour smell of dye and metal, and on years of quiet endurance. Outside, the evening sun washed everything in gold. The air was thick and warm, humming with the distant sound of cicadas. As she reached for the handle, her reflection flickered in the glass. Tired eyes, a streak of fabric dust across her cheek, and a faint glint from the silver badge clipped to her old canvas backpack. For just a moment, the light caught it right. A strange logo, half hidden beneath layers of grime and time. Then the image disappeared as she stepped away. The road home stretched long and empty. Rows of shuttered shops lined the street, their signs faded, their windows broken. But Maya's steps were steady, unhurried. There was no anger in her face, no trace of defeat, only a quiet, deliberate calm. Inside her chest, something steady was building. A resolve shaped not by rage but by patience. She had been underestimated all her life, and now she knew that would soon change. The next morning, the factory felt different. The usual clatter of machines was drowned by whispers. Workers gathered in small clusters, eyes darting toward the parking lot where 3 black cars gleamed under the sunlight. Men in crisp suits stepped out, their shoes clicking sharply against the concrete floor as they entered Mr. Dalton's office. From his glass window, Dalton's figure could be seen pacing, shoulders stiff, face pale. He kept tugging at his tie, wiping his forehead with a trembling hand. The workers exchanged uneasy glances. "Are we being sold?" someone murmured. "They say the company's been losing money for months," another replied. The tension thickened, filling the room like fog. Even the machines seemed to slow, their steady rhythm faltering. Minutes stretched like hours. Then, the office door opened. The suited men stepped aside, forming a small corridor of silence, and through it walked Maya. Her steps were calm, deliberate. Her uniform had been replaced by a pressed blouse, her hair neatly tied back. A faint, knowing smile touched her lips. Every whisper stopped. The woman who had left unpaid just yesterday now stood where no worker had ever stood before, at the threshold of power, carrying a quiet authority that no one could explain. Mr. Dalton's mouth fell open as Maya stepped into his office. The air inside felt thick, heavy with confusion and disbelief. He fumbled for words, his voice cracking like dry wood. What are you doing here?" Maya said nothing at first. She calmly placed a leather folder on his desk, the sound of it landing sharper than any shout. When she finally spoke, her voice was low, steady, unshaken. "As of this morning, I'm the new majority shareholder of this factory." The words hung in the air like thunder after lightning, silent, but impossible to ignore. Dalton blinked, his face draining of color. Around them, the suited men stood still, watching. Maya opened the folder, revealing stamped documents and signatures. Her tone remained composed, almost gentle as she explained. For years, she'd been attending night classes after her shifts, studying business management while the world slept. When she discovered the factory was up for sale, she gathered her savings, every cent from her hard-earned wages, and joined a small group of investors who believed in her vision. Now, the woman Dalton refused to pay stood before him, not as a worker, but as his employer. The silence that followed was not of shock alone. It was respect, long overdue. Mr. Dalton stood frozen, his lips parting, but no words coming out. The weight of his disbelief filled the room like smoke. Maya, calm and poised, turned toward the large glass window where dozens of faces peered in, the same faces that had once looked away when she was humiliated. Her eyes softened. She took a breath and spoke, her voice steady yet warm, carrying easily through the glass and over the hum of idle machines. "From now on," she said, "everyone here will be treated with respect. No one will ever work unpaid again." For a moment, there was silence, a stillness heavy with disbelief and wonder. Then, a single pair of hands began to clap. Another followed. Soon the factory echoed with applause, rising and swelling until it filled every corner of the building. Tears glistened in the eyes of the workers. Some smiled through them, others simply watched her, the woman who had endured quietly, only to rise beyond anyone's imagination. Maya didn't gloat. She didn't need to. Her smile was small, serene, not of victory, but of justice finally restored. Outside, sunlight streamed through the windows again, painting the floor in gold. For the first time, the factory felt alive. The noise of the applause faded slowly, replaced by the steady hum of the machines restarting, the heartbeat of a new beginning. Maya stood for a moment, taking it all in. The same walls that had once witnessed her exhaustion now seemed to breathe with renewed life. She walked through the factory floor, her steps unhurried, her fingers brushing over the rolls of soft fabric. She remembered every stitch, every cut, every night she'd gone home with aching hands and an empty stomach. Now those same hands held something far greater, control over her own future. The workers watched her pass, some nodding quietly, others still in awe. Maya didn't meet their gaze with pride, but with understanding. She knew their struggles, their fears, their silent endurance. As sunlight streamed through the tall windows, the narrator's voice lingered softly in the air. Sometimes, silence isn't weakness. It's the sound of someone building something greater, quietly, patiently, waiting for the right moment to rise. Maya paused at the center of the room, her hand resting on the machine she once operated. A faint smile curved her lips. She didn't just own a factory now, she owned her story. And this time, no one could take it away.